Darn. Hey, loved ones, Management 3130 people. I obviously started the camera recording, and I'm teaching to you in our classroom, 1104. And my office is directly across the way. I had the doors open, and I heard a new song from Matt Mayer, Alive and Breathing. I love it. The song is Drive. It's like classic Southern rock. Powerful message, powerful music. So really a big fan of contemporary Christian music. That and anything Migos. Yeah, anything. I wouldn't be a very good poker player, would I? I want to tell you a Migos story. A few years ago, probably before you were students on this campus, Migos came to campus for a concert. They were brought here by UPB, University Planning Board. Don't know who they are, but they make bad decisions. I mean, what could possibly go wrong bringing a group of convicted felons to campus to perform? Huh? What could go wrong? So, to no one's surprise, when those young men were on stage, they were arrested for, give me a drum roll, thank you. They were arrested for possession of firearms by convicted felons and, of course, drugs. One of them bailed out pretty quickly, Offset, and the other two spent some time in the Bullitt County Jail because every time they had an arraignment hearing, they were incredibly disrespectful to the judge, and the judge would just say, well, boys, you're apparently not ready. You can go back and wait. That's possible. They actually liked the Bullitt County Jail. The only thing I remember about the Bullitt County Jail is every Wednesday is fried chicken day. That's all I got, all I can remember. So they eventually got out. But I think, y'all, Offset married Cardi B. Oh dear. When I learned of that a little while ago, I was reminded of a passage in the wisdom literature of the Bible. The wisdom literature is generally regarded to be three books: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, mostly written by Solomon, who was then the king of Israel and arguably a wise man. So I have a very, very short passage to share with you. And this one, Offset linked up with Cardi B. This is Proverbs 21:19. Better to live in a desert than with a quarrelsome and ill-tempered wife. Oh dear. So, I want to jump into chapter 14. This is a powerful chapter. Tons of good content. This is a chapter that largely focuses on the domain of leadership. And I think the timing is good. The reason that I did that leadership PowerPoint presentation to you in the session before this is I wanted you to have that overview. In fact, some of the things that I presented to you in the overview appear in the chapter. So let me just jump in. This is a chapter on power and influence and leadership. And if you've seen the session before this, that would have been the session, that would have been session 24. That was a leadership presentation. If you've had a chance to view it, you would know that Gary Uckel defines leadership as a process in which an individual intentionally influences a group of collaborators to carry out a group task. Simple, powerful, durable definition of leadership. Now, I think it's equally as important that I define power. Now, I get it that power comes in a lot of flavors. But power in this context, power in the context of leadership and organizations, is defined as the ability to influence outcomes. Classic definition of power. And in the text, there's a presentation on sources of power. It comes from the work of two psychologists, French and Raven. They wrote this paper probably in the early 60s. And they said, we believe, if we're talking about individuals, that power comes from 5 different sources. And they describe it as legitimate, reward, coercive, expert, and referent power. And I'm going to talk about each of the 5 of them now. So, Legitimate power is positional. This may be a weak example, excuse me. But to some modest degree, I have power over you. And by that I mean I choose the content that's delivered, I choose the tempo, the frequency, how you're evaluated, that sort of thing. So I have positional power, which means that to some modest degree, I can influence outcomes. I don't take that in any way other than we have this instructor-student relationship. But the point is, positional power. Lots of times, the legitimate power accrues to someone in a given position. Managers have legitimate power, don't they? Because they occupy a position in an organization and they have a set of responsibilities, things for which they are accountable. Now, related to this thing about legitimate power, reward power and coercive power are literally flip sides of the same coin. Generally speaking, I was just talking about a manager who has legitimate power over any of us because of the position that that person holds in an organization. Typically, a manager has reward power. She or he can reward me if I'm an employee and I do good things. I may get a raise or a bonus or a good assignment or praise or who knows what. But the point is, if I do good things, whomever has reward power has the authority, the power to reward me. And rewards take different forms. Similarly, if we stick with this managerial thing, if somebody's in a legitimate position of power, they have authority over any of us, and they can reward us, they also can exert coercive power. They can punish us. Sometimes they can fire us, can't they? Sometimes they can put some sort of a report in a personnel file. Sometimes they can give us crappy assignments. Sometimes they can yell at us or embarrass us or make us feel badly or something like that. But I just want you to understand that reward power and coercive power are literally two sides of the same coin. Typically, the people who have the power to reward any of us have the power to punish any of us. Now, I want to jump over here and I want to talk about the two that remain, expert power and referent power. Expert power is a pretty simple concept. There are so many people in our lives that have expert power and they can influence outcomes. I have a lifelong love affair with cars, and I'm very happy if I have a wrench in my hand, but that's because I'm an analog man. I like mechanical things. If I'm doing anything with a car, the problem is electronic, I don't have the competencies to solve that. So I turn to people who are auto techs, people of expertise. If I am ill, I'm going to go to a doctor because a competent doctor can diagnose what's wrong and give me a treatment plan. I am married to a CPA. I know tax law well enough to know from being a practitioner decades ago that it's incredibly complex. There's no way that I would do my own tax return. So I would turn to somebody who has those credentials. So we get this thing about expert power. There are people, by virtue of their education, their training, their experience, have genuine, legitimate expertise. And they literally influence what we do. So expert power is pretty straightforward. Of the 5 sources of power that French and Raven talk about, the one that I think is most challenging to understand is referent power. If you look at the first 5 letters of that word, the base is refer. To whom do we refer? Referent power essentially says that there's someone in your life who matters to you so much that you wish to model your behavior after that person. That person is a reference point for you. I would say that in my life there have been 3 men that have had referent power. My dad was one. Certainly I would always want to do things that pleased him. I have another dear friend who died a few years ago named Jeff Cooper. Same there. And I had a high school English teacher named John McBride who had referent power over me. He had a very positive and durable impact over my trajectory through life. But my point is, you can think of all kinds of contemporary examples. Do you think that Michael Jordan has referent power? How many young men would like to grow up to be like Michael Jordan? Y'all, you know we are all flawed, imperfect beings. But Michael had a remarkable experience as a college athlete. I think he was at Chapel Hill. I think he played for North Carolina. And then, of course, he won, Lord knows, 6 championships with the Bulls or something like that. A supremely talented guy. He's now a billionaire businessman. And yes, we are all flawed and imperfect, but Michael Jordan has gone through life without a lot of scandals or bad decisions. And that doesn't describe a lot of athletes. A lot of athletes make very bad decisions because all of a sudden they're stupid rich and they don't know what to do with it. So my point is, Michael Jordan, for a lot of people in this country, especially young men, Michael Jordan has referent power. They look at him and say, gosh, I want to be like Michael Jordan. I want to be a good college athlete or a pro athlete or a successful businessman or whatever. So referent power says that we use someone as a point of reference. And that person matters to us, and we want to model our behavior after that person. So I think the concept is not difficult to understand. I just think it's messier and more complex than the others. So again, this little mini presentation on the board, this is the work of two psychologists, French and Raven. And what they do is they suggest, they give us this conceptual framework, arguing that when it comes to a person, these are the 5 sources of power that accrue to us individually. Before I step away from this conversation about power, I want to mention something about power that is really, I think, critical to this discussion. Excuse me. That is that it's pretty well understood in the literature of leadership of work behavior, that power can flow in 2 directions. If I possess power, no matter what the source is, if I possess power over you, and that power flows from me to benefit you, our group, our team, our organization, what I'm doing is I'm doing something called social power. The power that I possess benefits others. It flows outward from me. If I'm using power, is socialized power. The other form of power, which is just evil 100% of the time, is personal power. And that's a situation in which it's directional. Social power flows from the individual, from the team lead out, and benefits others. If I'm the person who has the power and I focus it in on me to benefit self, that is personalized power. And that is evil, wrong, 100% of the time. There are very few things that I could ever talk about with you in these behavioral sciences that are absolutely black or white. It's one way or the other. But it turns out that the use of socialized power, if I possess power and I use it to benefit others, that's socialized power. That is wholesome always. Similarly, if I possess power and I direct it inward to benefit me, that's personalized power, and that is evil always. Again, really rare that I can be that black or white about something, but that is one of the few things in this domain that is that clear cut. So now, I'm on 541 of the text, and I want to take you through a table that's there. The table is 14.2, and it's on page 541, and let me grab it and we'll talk about it. So, I'm in chapter 14. Whoops, forgive me. I think it was 541. It is. Table 14.2 on page 541. What this table describes are common influence tactics, ways that you and I can influence members of our team to accomplish a particular goal. Now, there are 9 of these influence tactics described, and I'll talk about most of them, but perhaps not all. But my point is that some of these are hard tactics. You push people into a situation where they have no graceful exit. And others are soft tactics. And of the nine that are presented here, of the 9 that we'll talk about, I mean this sincerely, I have only used 2. And the 2 that I've used, and I really feel, I use consultation, which we'll talk about in a moment, and I use rational persuasion. I think those are excellent ways to influence people. For example, let me tell you what it says about rational persuasion. It says, if we're using that technique, we're trying to convince someone of something, we're trying to present our argument with reason or logic or facts. Now I want you to think about me saying to you that that's my strong preference. If I'm a team lead, if you and I have some shared objective, something we have to accomplish, and I'm the team lead, I am not going to say my way or the highway. I'm going to say to you, look, here's what I think we should do, here's why. I want to persuade you, I want you to reflect on it and make a rational decision and think, yes, I think that's the best choice. Now, that means that we debate and discuss, doesn't it? But the point is, I want to persuade you using logic and rational thinking and facts. I don't want to force feed something to you. So I'm really convinced that rational persuasion is the right thing to do. Now, clearly, there are some contexts where we can't rely on that. For example, let's assume that all of a sudden that I'm transformed. I'm no longer a college professor. I'm now a trauma surgeon. And I'm working in an ER, and someone has rolled into my surgical suite on a hospital gurney. And this person has multiple trauma wounds, gunshots, knives, it doesn't matter. I will be barking out orders. I won't be consulting people. I'm making these hasty assessments based on my training and my experience because I have less than 2 minutes to save that person's life. So we can't debate, discuss. You see my point? I will take on the decision-making authority because the time is compressed and the outcome is critical. So there are times, and I understand that, where we don't have the luxury of discussing facts and logic and debates and discussions and that sort of thing. But given a choice, I've been in leadership roles throughout much of my life. Given a choice, I will always, my first choice will always be rational persuasion. I'm taking this out of order because the third one they talk about is consultation. And this is my other favorite. Getting others to participate in planning, decision-making, and changes. Getting others to participate. If you're using this consultation tactic, or technique rather, what you're doing is you're saying to the people in your group, here's the objective, here's what I think, what's your take on it? And what that means is that I'm no longer making this decision solo, I'm making this decision collaboratively with you. And the truth is, you have voice, you have a chance to express what you think is the best course of action, and everything that comes out of that is good. Truly, the decision quality is better, the satisfaction of the process is better, everything that comes out of consultation is good. So I've done this, I know I'm talking to you experientially, but rational persuasion and consultation are my go-to influence tactics. If we're in a team setting and I'm a team lead, that is how I'm going to try to positively shape what we do, how I'm going to try to influence what we do. So let's talk about some of the others that I don't like, and I think you'll see why I don't like them. Pressure. Pressure is number 8. Demanding compliance or using intimidations or threats. Really? Demanding compliance using intimidations or threats. Oh dear. Exchange. You make explicit or implied promises and you trade favors. This happens in legislative bodies all over the world. Let's assume that I'm a senator and you come to me because you have some legislative piece that you want enacted. And you say to me, Norton, I very much want to get this piece of legislature passed so that it can go before whomever it is, for whatever executive, governor, president, whatever, to sign it, but I need your support. And in exchange for you supporting my bill, I will support that bill that you are having, which says everybody has to have 83 guns in their home. You see the point? We are essentially trading favors. The person who was the protagonist of this that came to me and said, I need your support. If you support my bill, I'll support your bill. And he may not like my bill and I may not like his, but if we exchange favors, there's a probability that we can get both of them enacted. So this notion about exchange is common. What else did they talk about? Ingratiation, getting someone in a good mood prior to making a request. Ingratiation is a fancy word for sucking up. I can't imagine anything more unholy than just being inauthentic and just insincere, because what you're trying to do is manipulate someone. That horrifies me, but yet people do it. So I don't tend to introduce and develop each of these. What I want you to understand is, on page 541, there's an important table, and the table is called 9 Common Influence Tactics. And please read it and have a comfortable grasp of that material, because that is how leaders influence people to accomplish something in a team setting. And in my view, two of these techniques are superb. They fit anywhere. The outcomes are almost predictably excellent, always. The others, much less so. But again, you'll come to your own conclusions. So, the next topic in this chapter is the difference between leaders and managers, and the authors use the work of John Cotter. We just did that yesterday, session 24. That was a piece of that overview of leadership presentation, that distinction between leaders and managers. They do different things. Managers organize, leaders inspire. Managers deal with complexity, leaders deal with change. So they do different things, and it's quite difficult at a moment in time that anyone could be good both at management and leadership, because they're different tasks that require different skills. Now, I do want to talk about something that's introduced here that we didn't talk about in that overview presentation. There's a discussion on page 545 about dark side traits. Well, the clear implication is if there are dark side traits, there have to be bright side traits, yes? But right now, we're just going to focus on dark side traits. Bright side traits would be those stable predispositions that you and I have to lead in ways that are generally regarded as positive. Am I accessible? Am I transparent? Do I genuinely want to hear your perspective? There are a lot of things like that would be bright side traits. But dark side traits, the literature talks about 3. Interestingly, Dave Sikora, one of my treasured colleagues in the management department, Dave and I are doing a paper right now on how people in leadership roles use charismatic leadership to abuse the people whom they supervise. And we literally key on Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. So Machiavelli, I'm on 545 right now, and these are dark side traits, and they're pretty well understood in leadership literature because they've been in the world for centuries. Machiavellianism it's a high order form of manipulation. If anyone is Machiavellian, she or he would say to himself or herself, the ends justify the means. Whatever it is, this goal is so important that anything I do between here and there is justifiable. I can kill, plunder, rape, steal, doesn't matter. The ends justify the means. And sadly, there are people who have had leadership roles all over the world, all over recorded history, that have been Machiavellian. They really have no empathy for people. They only, their interest is on self, not on others. And again, in their view, if you're Machiavellian, the ends justify the means. I can do anything if I achieve that goal. So I don't want to be Machiavellian, and I hope you don't either. Narcissists, oh dear. Yes, here's a synonym for narcissist, selfie. Yeah. Narcissist is love of self. That is never healthy. There's no way to gift wrap that. Narcissists think that they're extraordinary, that the rules that are binding to other people shouldn't apply to them because they're so extraordinary. They live in a fantasy world. They tend to surround themselves with an applause group. If I were narcissistic, I would find a few people that really like me, and they would say, oh, Dr. Norton, you're so wonderful, we just love you. Narcissism is just a deep, deep character flaw. It is, there's no way to characterize it otherwise. That's why it is clearly regarded as a dark side trait. The last is psychopathy. And if you're a psychopath, you combine attributes of Machiavellianism and narcissism, and in addition to that, You have absolutely zero empathy. You're very deliberate in what you do. Zero empathy. You don't care about the consequences to anybody. I will promise you, anyone who is a murderer, whether it's a group setting or an individual setting, is a psychopath. No regard for human life. If you are defending your loved ones, if you're defending your own life, you're not a murderer. You're acting in some sort of a self-defense thing. If you're in active combat with an armed enemy force, that isn't murder. Murder is malicious. It's like a form of hate. It's taking a life for the sake of taking that life, not to protect yourself or loved ones or anybody else. So psychopaths are just so far past normal bounds of standards that I can't competently deal with them. So psychopathy combines the attributes of Machiavellianism and narcissism, and it adds zero empathy. You don't give a crap about anybody's life. And virtually everything that psychopaths do is deliberate. It's an active choice. So those three things, Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy, are the dark side traits. And the unfortunate thing is, since we recognize that there are bright side traits, in many people, dark side and bright side traits can coexist. I would say to you that I think Elon Musk is a nutcase. I really do. The man makes, some people think he's a visionary. I think he's a moron. He's a very wealthy moron, but nonetheless, wealth is not a measure of much other than wealth. But my point is that Musk doubtless has some bright side traits. I mean, he has to have. He's the CEO of a publicly held company. The stock has just got astronomical valuations. Big parts of the investment community love him because they think he's a visionary and he's going to change the landscape of vehicles. And I don't. Again, as I say, I think the man is crazed in ways that are unappealing to me. So I think Elon Musk is actually a great example of a man in a very visible leadership role who possesses simultaneously that coexist, that bright side traits and dark side traits coexist. Now, you don't have to agree with me, or you can propose somebody that you think is a better example. But he is so visible, it's hard not to. I want to talk now about leader behaviors. I'm on 550. I'm going to put some stuff on the board, but it'll just take me a moment. I want to tell you a short story about effective leader behaviors. It starts right here, OSU, Ohio State University. Go Buckeyes. Who would name a team after a nut that's poisonous? People in Ohio, apparently. Immediately after World War II ended, 1945, there was a group of scholars at Ohio State that started studying leadership. And the reason they thought that was a propitious time to do that is something like 18 or 20 million American servicemen returned to life in the United States as civilians, but many of them had served in active combat. So they'd been in this crucible kind of an environment where they'd either been leaders in combat or they'd been led in combat. And the point is that leadership has real premium in settings like that. So this group of scholars at Ohio State started studying leadership. And they didn't exclusively study returning soldiers, but that was the impetus. That was the thing that started this line of research. And they started publishing the results about 8 years later. And the reason there was this long lag between the end of World War II and the first publications from the Ohio State group, they started, they had this fundamental question. It's at the top. What leader behaviors are effective? And what they thought, they as a group of bright scholars, they identified a set of behaviors, and I think they might have started with maybe 150 behaviors that they thought predicted effective leadership. So they would do a study, gather data, and do some data analytics, which would literally, it would reduce the number of factors that had significance. It's called factor analysis, literally. So let's say for the sake of discussion that they did a study and they initially had 150 factors, and they found that 43 of them fell out. These factors individually couldn't account for any of the variance that they were capturing. So they have no value. So if that were the case, the second study would have 107 factors, the 150 minus the 43. And they gathered data with a second group, a second sample group. So they did these data reduction analytics over the course of a number of years. And they came to a result that to me is both stunning and exciting. What the scholars at Ohio State discerned in doing about 8 years of empirical research, it was really high quality stuff. It was theoretically strong and it was methodologically strong. Good science. What they found was that two behaviors predict effective leaders. The first is, how good are you at task behaviors? Can you get the job done? Now what that means generally is that you need some domain competence. You need to know something about logistics or supply chain management or accounting or finance. You need to know something about the domain so that you can organize the task and assign people to it and oversee their work and contributions. So if you have good task behavior, if you can competently get a job done, then you're on the way to being an effective leader. But standing alone, that's insufficient. The other thing that they found, the only other factor that really predicted effective leadership was, do you, the leader, engage in relational behaviors? Are you considerate of your people, authentically? You care about them, you care about their well-being, you put them in a situation that puts them at risk or whatever the case may be. So I want to do something that comes out of my experiences in the military, but right now this is just going to be a goofy role play. Let's pretend that there are 51 of you in this room, and I wish there were, believe me. I would much rather talk to you than to this machine. So let's assume you and I are members of an infantry platoon, and I'm the platoon leader. And our battalion commander says, Norton, you and your soldiers have to get that objective. Absolutely essential that you take control of that objective. So let's pretend that I am a leader that's very, very high on task behaviors. I can get the job done, but I'm very, very low on relational behaviors. I don't care about my people. So we attack this objective, we take it from the enemy, and all of you are killed and wounded. So I score high on task, low on relational, right? So I'm not an effective leader. Well, let's take that situation and turn it upside down. Let's assume that I don't get the job done, but that I really care about you. So we all get in a circle and hold hands and discover the inner children in ourselves, and we take a vote and we decide not to attack the objective, or we throw rocks at it or something stupid. So my point is, in the second case, I would be high on relational behaviors, but I would be zero on task. So the point is there has to be a balance. And what Ohio State scholars found is they were able to determine that the only people who were effective as leaders were people who were high on task and high on relational behaviors. You had to be competent to get the job done. You had to take care of your people doing it. So this is a study that's gone on in an academic environment for a number of years. And of course, there's probably been 50, 60 years worth of good insights added to it. Now, I want to tell you something about the United States Army. It's entirely possible that all branches of the U.S. military have this same model, but I only served in the Army. I didn't serve in the Marines or the Coast Guard or anything else. So, in the Army, if you're in a leadership role, whether you're a non-commissioned officer or whether you're an officer, you are told that there are two things that are absolutely primary to what you do. You have to accomplish your mission, and you have to take care of your soldiers in the process. That's what unit leaders are taught in the military, in the United States Army. Accomplish the mission, take care of your people. I am fascinated, because I've come from this tradition, to discover that the academic community and the military community is in complete harmony. To get the job done is to accomplish the mission. To engage in relational behaviors with your people is to take care of your soldiers. These aren't parallel, they're identical. They're just different terms because they are used in different contexts. So my point is that it fascinates me that as messy and as complex as leadership is, you can be an effective leader if indeed you can get the job done. You're high on task behaviors and you're also high on relational behaviors. You are genuinely considerate of your people. You take care of them. The thing that relates to this that fascinates me is everything about task behaviors and relational behaviors is skill-based. That means it's transferable. What if I'm in a leadership role and I score high on relational behaviors but low on task? There are all sorts of interventions that can teach me how to better accomplish the job. Similarly, if I'm high on task behaviors and low on relational behaviors, all sorts of guidance and intervention out there to grow my skills relationally. All sorts. So both of these, whether it's the academic tradition or the military tradition, both of these are skill-based, which means that if I'm weak on one, I can get better. There are plenty of well-regarded interventions that will grow my task skills or my relational skills. So the truth is, anybody can be an effective leader. If you have domain competence and you authentically give a crap about your people, you can be an effective leader. Powerful stuff, I love it. I absolutely, it fascinates me that something as complex and messy as leadership is reducible to something as simple as that, those two skills. Are you good at organizing and executing the task? Do you authentically care about your people? Now I'm on page 568, LMX theory, the three letters, LMX, Lima, Mike, X-ray. For those of you who are fans of the military alphabet. LMX is a theoretical foundation, or framework rather, and it operates any time that we are ever in a group doing anything together. It is universal in its application and its operation. What LMX stands for is just a little pseudo-acronym. LMX stands for Leader-Member Exchange. So, again, this is a role play and I get it, but I can do this quickly and I hope I can do it well in your eyes. Let's go back to an assumption I made earlier. 51 of you in the room, I'm in the front. It happens that I'm the team lead. Whether I was appointed or elected or emerged, my path does not matter, but I'm the team lead. And there are 51 of you in here, and we have some common goals that we have to accomplish. What leader-member exchange theory says is that with every single one of you, I'm going to have an exchange relationship. This is a dyad. You are one node on the dyad, and I'm the other one. So I'm going to be in 51 dyadic relationships. I'm going to have a direct interactions with all 51 of you. Now, what LMX says is every member of the group, all 51 of you, self-select. You decide that you're going to have a high quality relationship with me, the team lead, or not. The team lead doesn't put you in categories, you self-select. You say, I believe in this guy, I believe in our mission, I'm in 10 tenths. So I'm going to have a high quality relationship. I'm going to commit to working hard and whatever the case may be, taking care of the folks around me. Alternatively, some of you may choose to have a low-quality relationship, and you may say, oh, this guy's just a bonehead. I don't care about him, about his mission. I'll just do my job, screw it. So my point is that the team lead doesn't put you in any category. You, each individual member of this team, self-selects. You and you alone decide that you are either going to have a high-quality relationship with the team lead or low quality. Now, that's what leader-member exchange says. It says that the team lead has a direct interaction with each of you. Individually, two nodes, you and me. But I have 51 of those, since that's the size of this group. Now, I want you to think about the consequences of two groups. If I may, I'll call them the in-group and the out-group. The in-group would be the people who choose to have a high-quality relationship with the team lead. The out-group will be the people who choose to have a low-quality relationship. So the people who are in the in-group, they're on board. I will recognize that. I will trust them. I will delegate things to them. I will develop them, and that is all well. The people in the out-group, though, if you choose not to commit, we don't have any basis for trust or respect. We have no basis for me delegating tasks to you, because you have declared to me that you don't give a crap. That was your decision. You choose to be in-group or out-group. So the point is that not only creates tension, the people in the in-group know who they are, and the people in the out-group know who they are, but they'll be treated differently, won't they? I'm not saying that the in-group people are privileged, but my interactions with them are going to be very different than my interactions with the out-group. So in that situation, even though the people in the out-group chose to be in the out-group, they feel a lack of equity. They will point the finger and say, hey, those guys are getting stuff I'm not getting. So there's a perception by the members of the out-group that they're being treated unfairly. And yet they individually chose to have a low-quality relationship, to make almost no commitment to the team lead and whatever it is that we're doing. So I've been in this situation. I think it's natural that it's always going to happen. But here's what I think all leaders should do. This is an absolute statement, and it is my view of the world, and I get that. You can challenge it. You can disagree with me. I think if we're in a leadership role, every one of us has a responsibility to try to convert every member of the out group into members of the in group. So we don't have two groups. We have one team. Shared values, shared vision. What that means is that I have to have a great deal of direct interaction with every one of you. I could go to you and say, you know, you're just not plugged in. What can I do? What can I do to support you so that you're on board, you make a contribution? It's obvious to me that you're not, so what can I do? And you might say, you know, if you only did this, whatever this is, then I'd be on board. Well, if I can cure that problem, I'm going to. I'd be crazy not to. So my point is that this is not me delivering a sermon or a lecture. It is a natural consequence of any group that the group will literally bifurcate. That's what LMX says. That's what Leader Member Exchange says. It says that every one of you individually, you will choose to have a high quality relationship with the team lead or low quality. So the group is going to naturally self-select. But my argument is that if you're in a team lead role and you let that persist, if you don't make an effort to bring the people in the out group into the in group so that there are no longer any groups, if you don't make an effort to do that, you'll have these visible divisions, you'll have tension, you'll have a perceived lack of equity. There's nothing good about letting that situation persist. So again, I think it's incumbent. If you're in a leadership role, get rid of the out group. Do everything you can that's possible, humanly possible, with each member of that out group individually. Direct personal interactions to convert them, to make them feel valued, to make them feel a part of the group. And of course, when they do that, they will contribute in meaningful ways. So that's a responsibility of all leaders. I'm convinced of it. I know LMX, I know this stuff works, been there. And I just, again, I know it sounds like I'm sermonizing, but if you're in a leadership role, get rid of the out group. Work with these people individually, anything in your power to make them lose their low quality relationship and have a high quality relationship with you. The last thing I want to talk about, my notes don't show a page number, but this had to come out of the chapter somewhere. There's a short discussion in the text about humility, and I believe that is profoundly significant. I mean that, profoundly significant in probably every dimension of our lives. That is certainly a high order goal of mine. I would strive always, I would want always to behave in ways that are humble, to subordinate self, to give credit to others, to not say, hey, I'm all that in a bag of Doritos. Not very good with that yes snap, am I? But the thing about humility, it's not something that I am or I possess. It's much like cool. It's a perception other people have of me. If I said to you, I'm humble, I'm an arrogant fool. You can't claim humility. Other people look at your behavior and say, that guy subordinates self. He genuinely, authentically cares about us, about our goals, about our accomplishments, and he'll put himself second to that. So humility is so powerful, because what it does is if you engage in behaviors like that, it's so obvious to everyone. They perceive it as authentic. You can't fake humility, ever. But they'll perceive you as authentic if you're in this leadership role, and that builds trust and respect. That gets rid of the out-group, because people realize that your interest is their well-being and the goals and the mission of whatever our group is, not my glory or something like that. So again, I regret that I don't have a page number for this, but I can't tell you in a leadership context how important humility is. I think it's important in every dimension of our lives, but in a leadership role, it is stunningly significant, truly. So, I am ready now to ask you the off-topic question. Oh, let me mention something. Our next, it is my intention to film our next class at an outdoor facility. It won't be in room 1104. That is weather dependent, but I think I can pull it off. It'll be the same kind of presentation and content. It'll just be outdoors, and there will not be a whiteboard. There'll be other fun things there, but no whiteboards. So, my question to you as we wrap up this session, this is your attendance. I viewed this verification thing. What musical genre do I find most satisfying? I hate genre because I hate French words. Why can't we find an English word that describes it better? But what musical genre is most satisfying to me? Pretty straightforward if you have viewed this video. So, love you. Talk to you soon. This wraps up session 25 and our conversation on chapter 14. Be safe, be well. I'll catch up with you soon.